welcome back to part 2 of our Releasable group abseil videos. If you didn't watch the first one, it is worth mentioning that we're just going to focus now on context and why you might choose different methods, and then we're going to look at each of those methods. The actual sort of final picture, if you like, with everything set up, we're not going to duplicate that on each one, otherwise it's going to end up being enormous again. So if you've got any questions or queries about that, have a look at part 1. Let's get cracking on part 2 then. The context is going to be the same as it was with the system that we showed you in part 1. We've got multiple anchor points. The abseil rope, the semi-static rope, that's been fixed to 2 of them that have been equalised way over that back there. I've got a big tree and a boulder. And then I'm bringing the rope down into my working area. I've made myself safe. I've got my French prusik on here with my rope lanyard. And what we're trying to do is come up with a way of making that BFK, that big fat knot, a little bit more manageable. The next 2 anchors I need to incorporate then, I'm just going to clip the middle one to start with. Get my screw gate done up. And I'm thinking again about this issue that the load is going to be coming out. It's not going straight down, it's coming this way as my students are heading off over the edge there. And here I'm going to create 2 loops now rather than 3. So there's my first short one, it's sort of chest height. Gonna double my rope up hand span, just adjust that. So that's going to give me my longer loop. And now what I'm going to do is tie a BFK, but with a lot less rope. That nice high attachment point, again, just watch your prusik. I think we just need to tweak that a little bit, don't we? Get that a little bit tighter. And you'll find now it's much easier to get that knot in because you're playing with a lot less rope. Again, that idea of don't be too quick to cinch everything together, get things where you want them to be. And even though there's less body to this rope, to the knot, I'm still gonna dress each individual element. And you can see that's cinched in really nicely now. All I've got to do with this rope is head up to that high anchor point and pop a clove hitch in. Nice, there we go. So now what I can do is bring my French prusik down and transfer myself, as we saw in the previous video. And then into this loop, as well as my rope lanyard, I can put the releasable abseil, that's going to go in there. And then I've got my long loop for the safety. So by using a clove hitch up here rather than incorporating that loop, much more efficient, and you're much more likely to get your tensions just spot on. The other advantage is if that anchor point is quite a long way back, once I've set the rope and there's a bit of weight on this system, I can always scramble back and then fix the clove hitch at that point. So it works for you when your anchors are a little bit more spread out. So yeah, a nice system. That was the second of our techniques then. Are there other ways? Of course, and we're going to have a look at those. Technique number 3 then, and what we're going to have a look at here is equalising 2 of our anchor points so that we can be a little bit more efficient with the rope. Generally, I always like to attach in with the rope, and you're going to see why in a moment. There's a few things that happen when we use a sling like this. But it could be in this context I actually don't have enough. So if I went there and back with the rope to build the belay, with my little reservoir of rope left down here and then the tail down the line of the abseil, there actually isn't enough rope. So yeah, we need to be a wee bit more efficient. I'm going to use an aramid sling to do this. Get the stitching, the suede up here, out the way by the carabiner. Now the reason I picked one of these rather than a Dyneema sling is at the end of the session, even once a lot of people have been down, the knot I'm about to put in here is going to be easier to tie. Think about, again, where your students are heading, so it's not down here, it's out here. And then I'm going to slide my hand up, and I'm actually going to tie a figure of 8 knot here rather than an overhand. An overhand would be fine if you didn't have enough sling, but here I can get the figure of 8 in, and it'll just, again, make my life easier at the end of the session. I'll be able to get that out. Again, you've created a little bit of a BFK there, so just cinch all of that in nice and neatly. There we go. So we can put a carabiner in there. Nice. In goes the rope. And let's get ourselves a little bit closer. Again, paying attention to your angles there. See if it's that prusik, just make sure it's not pulling your rope out of line. That looks like it's going to be about right. So there's my short loop, and now I'm going to put in my longer loop. That hand span, yeah, that looks good. See, I'm having to work quite hard with that outside rope, and this is a problem now with the sling. It's very easy for me to lose the tension on this and not have the tension on that. So just take your time, get that looking good, and then an overhand knot on the bite here again. And take your time, get your loops where you want them. You can tidy up some of the worst of the twists at that point as well. Dress each element. Okay. Ooh. Right, so that works quite nicely. I've got the point there for the tied off ab rope, and then the loop there for the safety, and my lanyard was coming to this loop as well. The issue we have with this system, it's very vulnerable to any tracking that your students might do. So that's where the student's going to be attached, that's where the releasable abseil rope's going to be. Now just keep your eyes on the blue sling here and watch what happens when I move this even just a little bit to the right. You see how the weight comes off, not just one, but both of those points really quickly, because they're equalised with a sling up there. Now part of the problem is this knot is very close to this knot, so it exasperates the impact that the tracking has on the belay. If these were 2 anchor points a couple of meters back, you would find it has less impact. So here it's the proximity that's not working for us. And I'd be really nervous of using this system in this context, but if we put those anchor points over the top and join them together with a sling, it would work quite well in that instance. The other thing I could do here is I could change this and be even more efficient with the rope by putting in a figure of 8 with bunny's ears and then just clove hitching back to here. Let's just have a quick look at that, because we haven't done the bunny's ears yet, so it'll be a good chance to introduce it. So I'm going to think about where I want that power point again. It's going to be about there. Always a wee bit more rope than you think you need for bunny's ears. And all it is a figure of 8 on the bite, but we just do something different with the end of the rope. So here I'm going to tie a figure of 8 then, like I would normally. You can see I've kept it really nice and small and compact. And I'm going to push those 2 ropes through the centre there, like that. And can you see that's giving me my 2 loops already. I'm going to make the back one a little bit longer, making sure you don't pull that all the way through. It's going to sit about there. And now I'm going to loop that over those and cinch it up at the top of the figure of 8. So I just put my hand through there, look, pull it all through nice and neat. Now you need to be careful at this point, because if I just pull down on this, I'll end up with two loops the same size again, which is why I sort of start it off at this point. So there's your long one, and there's your slightly shorter one. Keep it nice and neat. Again, you know, it's just something you need to be mindful with all of these bulkier knots. There we go. So that's our bunny's ears. So lanyard and tied off abseil in there, safety rope in there, and now I can clove hitch into here. Peace and quiet in the countryside, eh? So think about where the abseil line's going to go. Watch your prussuck's not pulling anything out of line there, and then I can just cinch that clove hitch in. Really efficient with rope this way, so that's ace. Can put my abseil and my lanyard in there, and the safety rope in there. Now, does that have a impact on the robustness of the sling? Let's see how vulnerable it is now if I wiggle this around a little bit. So yeah, that's definitely working a little bit better. It's not quite so sensitive to me moving the belay around, so quite a good option. And again, if those are a little bit further back, it does work really well. Time for number 4. Technique number 4 then, and this works really well when the anchor points are all spread out at the back and you're still needing to be efficient with the rope. I've got my first two equalised and tied in with the end of the rope. I'm still on my lanyard as normal. I've got two anchor points here that I want to incorporate, but I want to be a little bit closer to the edge. The edge is a little bit further away, let's say. So if I want to come sort of all the way over here, and if the last anchor point's further back again, then that technique of going there and back with all the ropes, it just becomes a little bit of a handful. So we don't want to use slings because things are too far apart. I'm going to do everything with the rope. First thing I'll start with then is the figure of 8 with bunny's ears. Let's put that in. Remember, always a bit more rope than you think you need. That's looking good, so I can come right down now to the edge. Fab. Gonna head back up to the first of my anchor points. Be mindful of your lanyards. And I'm gonna pop a loop in here on the rope using a overhand knot. So I'm just gonna sort of judge the distance, give myself a little bit more rope for the knot. And I'm gonna tie an overhand knot here. You can use an alpine butterfly, but there's nothing wrong with the overhand knot, and it's a little bit more adjustable as well, I think, if you're not super confident with tying alpine butterflies. You'll notice I haven't cinched that in tight yet. Just going to think about where I want to be, and then as I pull on the rope, I'm going to sort of dress that overhand knot so it's under just the right tension. That's looking nice. And now I'm just going to take that back to my last point, and that could be quite a long way away. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to pop a clove hitch in. Right. So that works really well. Getting the tension right on the anchor point here, on this one, can be a little bit tricky, and you might well find that it's worth setting the abseil rope first. so that you've got a bit of tension and a little bit of weight on here, and then it makes it easier to get the tension on this one just right. Yeah, angles are important with this system. What I'm looking for is 60 degrees here or less, and 60 degrees here or less. If I tied the overhand knot further up here, then this rope would come out at a weird angle for that outside piece of protection, and it's not going to be incorporated into the belay properly. So just have a play when you're practicing with this one, and you'll see what I mean with that. So pay attention to those angles. You want everything coming into that nice sort of trident and into the figure of 8 with the bunny's ears. That's 4. Last one then. What are we going to do when the anchors are quite a long way back from our working area and the rope's actually not long enough? So in this instance we're going to need a third rope, we're going to need a rigger. So let's have a look at that. For our 5th and last technique, we're going to have a look at what we do when the anchor points are quite a long way from your working platform. It's now impractical to be trying to have loops going there and back. So what I've done is fixed the end to my equalised anchor points at the back again on the lanyard, and I'm going to use this rope now as a rigging rope, and I've got a second semi-static that we're going to clip in as an abseil. So let's get our figure of 8 with bunny's ears in here again. Quite a useful knot, we're using it quite a bit, aren't we? So again, a little bit more than you think. Keep it nice and neat. Okay, right, so that's ready for the safety, and then that's where the releasable abseil needs to go. Now, because my other 2 anchor points are quite a long way back, I haven't fixed them yet. You can see the rope's still slack here, but getting the tension right for that can be quite tricky. What I'm going to do then is grab my second semi-static rope, find the end of it. I'm just going to put a big knot in there, and that's sort of a just in case for me. If I release the system, I wouldn't want the tail to go through. Hopefully you've checked that your rope's long enough anyway, but there we go. And now what we want to do is get this rope down, and we're going to go through that process that we saw in the first video, where we're going to get a responsible person to come into the bottom and allow us to judge exactly how much rope to pull in. So let's pop this down the way then. Rope below. So then they come in, you pull it up, and then into here you're going to tie off your rope. Make sure that Italian's running towards the abseil. Yeah, that's good. Keep that nice and tidy. Make sure your loop is long enough. And then it's 2 ropes to 2 ropes again. Clip that back out of the way. So just get rid of that. What that will allow us to do is the tension here means it's much easier when you scramble back up. And that's why I haven't moved my lanyard onto here, because I need to go back up to the top. So I've kept it on the prusik, and I can head back up, and the weight on this rope will allow you to get the tension just right on this side of the belay when you're attaching it to your anchor points. Again, you're not going there and back, there and back, there and back. You're just trying to be efficient. That's what we want. that's 5 different ways of rigging a releasable group abseil. Are there other ways? Of course. Can you do variations of everything we've shown? Yes, you can. So now the best thing to do is to get out there and have fun with practicing it all.